What happens when a prince who preaches mental health awareness completely loses his mind on live television? Tonight, we're diving into one of the most shocking celebrity meltdowns ever caught on camera. And trust me, you've never seen anything like this before. The guest was supposed to be promoting his latest mental health initiative, but instead, he delivered a masterclass in hypocrisy that left Stephen Colbert speechless and security rushing to the stage. Before we get into this absolute train wreck, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because this story is going to blow your mind. Stephen Colbert adjusted his tie as he prepared for what he thought would be a routine interview. Prince Harry had been booked weeks in advance to discuss his upcoming mental health documentary, and the network executives were thrilled about the ratings potential. The Late Show's green room buzzed with anticipation as production assistants made final preparations. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Prince Harry," Colbert announced with his trademark grin, gesturing toward the stage entrance as the audience erupted in polite applause. Harry emerged from behind the curtain, waving, briefly before settling into the guest chair. His posture was rigid, and observant viewers might have noticed the slight tension in his jaw, a warning sign of what was to come. "Your Royal Highness, thank you for being here," Colbert began warmly. "I understand you're working on a new project focused on mental health awareness. Tell us about that." Harry shifted uncomfortably in his seat before responding. "Well, Stephen, mental health is something I'm incredibly passionate about. Too many people suffer in silence, and I believe we need to create safe spaces for honest conversations." The audience murmured approvingly, but Colbert, ever the skilled interviewer, decided to dig a little deeper. "That's admirable. Can you share what inspired this particular focus for you? Was there a personal moment that made you realize the importance of mental health advocacy?" Harry's expression darkened slightly. "I think we all have our struggles, Stephen. Some of us are just more public about addressing them than others." There was an edge to his voice that made Colbert raise an eyebrow. The host had interviewed countless celebrities over the years, and he recognized the signs of someone carrying emotional baggage into the conversation. "Absolutely," Colbert agreed, maintaining his professional demeanor. "Speaking of being public, about struggles, you've been quite open about your own journey. How do you balance vulnerability with maintaining privacy for your family?" Harry's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "Privacy is something that's been systematically stripped away from me my entire life. The media, the public, everyone thinks they have a right to know every detail of my personal business." The audience grew quieter, sensing the shift in energy. Colbert, experienced in handling difficult guests, tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "Well, that must be challenging, but your willingness to share your story has helped so many people feel less alone in their struggles," Colbert offered diplomatically. "Has it, though?" Harry snapped suddenly, his voice rising. "Or has it just given people more ammunition to judge me, to dissect every word I say, every decision I make?" The studio fell silent except for the hum of cameras still rolling. Colbert's smile faltered as he realized this interview was taking an unexpected turn. "I'm not sure I follow," Colbert said carefully. "Your advocacy work has been widely praised." Harry let out a bitter laugh. "Praised by who? The same media that spent years tearing my mother apart? The same establishment that pushed me to the breaking point?" Colbert glanced toward his producer offstage, who was frantically gesturing for him to keep the conversation moving. The host had conducted thousands of interviews, but something about Harry's demeanor was setting off alarm bells. "Let's talk about the positive impact you're having," Colbert suggested, his voice remaining steady despite the growing tension. "Your documentary aims to destigmatize mental health conversations, right?" "Destigmatize," Harry repeated mockingly. "You want to know what's stigmatized, Stephen? Being told you're privileged so your problems don't matter. Being expected to smile and wave while your entire life crumbles around you." The audience exchanged uncomfortable glances. This wasn't the inspiring mental health discussion they had expected. Colbert realized he was dealing with someone who was clearly struggling, But he also had a show to manage and an audience to consider. I think most people recognize that mental health challenges can affect anyone, regardless of their circumstances, Colbert replied diplomatically. Most people? Harry's voice cracked with emotion. Most people think because I was born into royalty, I should just shut up and be grateful. They don't understand what it's like to have every breath you take analyzed and criticized. Colbert took a deep breath, recognizing that his guest was spiraling. As someone who had built his career on empathy and understanding, he tried one more. Time to bring the conversation back to a constructive place. Harry, I hear that you're in pain, and I respect that. Mental health is important for everyone. But maybe we could focus on how your work is helping others who are struggling? Harry stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. The sudden movement startled the audience and sent the production crew into high alert. You don't hear anything, Harry said, his voice trembling with rage. You sit there with your smug little jokes and your comfortable life, pretending to care about mental health when really you just want ratings. Colbert remained seated, his hands clasped calmly in front of him, but his eyes showed genuine concern. Harry, I think we should take a breath here. Don't tell me to take a breath, Harry shot back, pointing an accusatory finger at the host. You have no idea what I've been through, what my family has endured because of people like you. The studio audience was completely silent now, watching in stunned disbelief as a member of the British royal family had what could only be described as a public breakdown on live television. Camera operators continued filming, unsure whether to stop or keep rolling as the situation deteriorated rapidly. People like me? Colbert repeated, his tone shifting from diplomatic to firm. Harry, I'm trying to have a respectful conversation here. You came on my show to talk about mental health, and I'm giving you that platform. Harry began pacing behind, his chair, his hands gesturing wildly as his composure completely unraveled. Platform? You think this is a favor? You invited me here because my name gets you viewers, not because you care about the cause. The studio's executive producer was now visible in the wings, speaking urgently into his headset while security personnel took positions near the stage exits. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether they were witnessing a planned segment or a genuine crisis. That's not true, Colbert said, rising from his desk to face his guest directly. I've covered mental health issues extensively on this show. I've shared my own struggles with anxiety and depression. This conversation matters to me. Harry spun around to face him, his eyes blazing with fury. Your struggles? You want to compare your middle-class American anxiety to what I've lived through? You chose this life, Stephen. I was born into a prison. And I respect that your experiences have been different from mine, Colbert replied, his voice remaining surprisingly calm despite the hostile environment. But right now, you're using your pain as a weapon against someone who's trying to help you share your message. The observation hit Harry like a slap. For a moment his face showed a flicker of recognition, as if he suddenly realized how he was behaving. But instead of backing down, the comment seemed to inflame him further. Help me? Harry laughed bitterly. You're just another vulture picking at the carcass of my family's tragedy. How many times have you made jokes about my mother's death on this show? The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Colbert's face went pale, and murmurs rippled through the audience. The host had never made light of Princess Diana's death, but Harry's emotional state had clearly distorted his perception of reality. Harry, I have never, ever made jokes about your mother's death, Colbert said firmly. That's a line I would never cross, and frankly, it's insulting that you would suggest otherwise. Insulting? Harry's voice cracked as he stepped closer to Colbert's desk. You want to talk about insulting? Try watching comedians make jokes about your family's pain for decades while you're expected to smile and take it. Security guards moved closer to the stage, ready to intervene if the situation escalated further. The tension in the studio was palpable, with crew members exchanging worried glances as they continued filming what was becoming a career-defining moment for all the wrong reasons. Colbert straightened his shoulders, his journalist instincts kicking in. "Harry, I understand you're hurting, but you're projecting your anger onto me for things I haven't done. This isn't healthy, and it's certainly not helping your mental health advocacy." "Don't you dare psychoanalyze me," Harry snarled, slamming his palm down on Colbert's desk with a loud crack that made everyone in the studio jump. "You sit there in your ivory tower, making millions off other people's misery, and you have the audacity to lecture me about mental health?" The desk slam was the final straw for the production team. The executive producer was now speaking directly to security, and cameras began pulling back to wider shots as personnel prepared for potential intervention. Colbert took a step back from his desk, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Harry, I think we need to stop this interview. You're clearly upset, and this isn't helping anyone." "Oh, now you want to stop?" Harry's voice reached a fever pitch. "Now that I'm not playing your little game, giving you the sanitized sound bites you can use to make yourself look compassionate? This is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment someone shows real emotion, real pain, you want to shut it down." "This isn't real emotion," Colbert shot back, his own patience finally wearing thin. "This is you having a tantrum on national television while claiming to advocate for mental health awareness. Do you see the irony here?" The words hit Harry like a physical blow. His face flushed red, and for a moment it looked like he might actually lunge at the host. The audience gasped collectively as Harry took another step forward, his fists clenched at his sides. "You think this is a tantrum?" Harry's voice was barely controlled, trembling with rage. "You have no idea what a real breakdown looks like. You want to see someone lose their mind? Keep pushing me." "I'm not pushing you anywhere," Colbert replied, his voice steady but his eyes now showing genuine concern for his own safety. "You're doing this to yourself, and you're doing it on live television in front of millions of people." Harry suddenly seemed to realize where he was, glancing around at the cameras, the audience, the crew members all staring at him in shock. But instead of sobering him up, the attention seemed to fuel his rage even more. "Good," he said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Let them see. Let them see what you people do to us. Let them see how you push and prod until we break, and then you act surprised when we snap." "Harry, nobody pushed you," Colbert said, backing away slightly as security guards moved closer to the stage. "You came here to talk about mental health, and I asked you normal interview questions. This reaction is entirely on you." "Normal questions?" Harry's laugh was completely unhinged now. "You ambushed me with questions about my personal life, my family, my privacy. You knew exactly what you were doing." The irony was lost on Harry that he had been the one to bring up his personal struggles, his family's treatment by the media, and his privacy concerns. Colbert had simply tried to steer the conversation toward the mental health project Harry was supposedly there to promote. "I asked you about your mental health advocacy work," Colbert said, his voice now carrying a note of exasperation. "You're the one who turned this into a personal attack session." "Personal attack?" Harry's eyes widened with disbelief. "You invited me here to humiliate me, to get me to break down on camera so you could have your viral moment. Well, congratulations, Stephen. You got what you wanted." The accusation was so divorced from reality that even some audience members began shaking their heads. Colbert had conducted the interview with remarkable restraint, repeatedly trying to redirect the conversation back to positive territory while Harry spiraled deeper into his emotional breakdown. "That's not what happened here, and you know it," Colbert said firmly. "You came here supposedly to help people with mental health struggles, but instead you've shown them the worst possible example of how to handle emotional distress." The observation struck Harry like a lightning bolt. For the first time since the interview began, he seemed to fully grasp the magnitude of what he was doing. His face went through a series of expressions: shock, realization, and then, incredibly, even more rage. "How dare you!" he whispered, his voice shaking with fury. How dare you turn this around on me when you're the one who created this situation? Colbert stared at Harry in complete disbelief. I created this situation? Harry, listen to yourself. You're standing on my stage, screaming at me because I asked you about the mental health project you came here to promote. The only person who created this situation is you. Harry's face contorted with rage as he pointed an accusatory finger at the host. You knew exactly what you were doing when you booked me. You researched every trigger, every sensitive topic, and you systematically went after each one. That's completely false, Colbert replied, his voice rising slightly as his own frustration began to show. I asked you 3 basic questions about your advocacy work. You turned this into a personal therapy session, and now you're blaming me for your breakdown. The audience watched in stunned silence as Harry began pacing again, his movements becoming more erratic and aggressive. Several people in the front row looked genuinely frightened, and ushers had quietly moved into position near the exits. Therapy session? Harry spun around to face Colbert, his eyes wild. You want to know about therapy? I've spent years in therapy trying to undo the damage that people like you have done to my family. And here you are, doing it again. Live on. Television. People like me? Colbert's composure finally cracked. Harry, I'm a talk show host who asked you softball questions about mental health. If you can't handle that without having a meltdown, maybe you shouldn't be advocating for mental health awareness. The words hit Harry like a physical blow. His mouth opened and closed several times as he struggled to process what Colbert had just said. The brutal honesty of the statement seemed to break through his delusions for just a moment. You think, I'm having a meltdown? Harry asked, his voice suddenly quiet and dangerous. Yes, Colbert replied without hesitation. That's exactly what this is. You're having a complete emotional breakdown on live television, and you're trying to blame everyone except yourself. Harry's face went through a series of expressions before settling on pure fury. You want to see a meltdown? I'll show you a meltdown. Before anyone could react, Harry grabbed the water glass from Colbert's desk and hurled it toward the host. Colbert ducked just in time, and the glass shattered against the backdrop behind him, sending water and glass fragments across the stage. The audience screamed, and chaos erupted in the studio. Security guards rushed onto the stage as crew members scrambled for cover. The executive producer was shouting orders while cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of the unprecedented breakdown. Get him off my stage, Colbert yelled, his professional demeanor completely abandoned, as he realized the situation had turned dangerous. Harry was now completely unhinged, shouting incoherently as security guards approached him. You want to destroy me? You want to finish what you started with my mother? Come on then. 2 large security guards moved in from either side, their hands raised in a calming gesture. Sir, we need you to calm down and come with us, one of them said firmly. Don't touch me, Harry screamed, backing away from the guards. You have no right to put your hands on me. I'm a member of the British royal family. Sir, you just threw a glass at the host, the other guard said, continuing to advance slowly. We need to remove you from the premises immediately. Harry looked around wildly, seeming to suddenly realize that he was surrounded. The audience was staring at him in horror. Crew members were pointing cameras at him, and security was closing in. For the first time since his breakdown began, he seemed to grasp the full magnitude of what he had done. This is all your fault, he said, pointing at Colbert one last time. You orchestrated this whole thing to humiliate me, and you got exactly what you wanted. I wanted to talk about mental health advocacy, Colbert replied, his voice shaking with adrenaline. Instead, you gave everyone watching a masterclass in how not to handle emotional distress. The security guards moved in simultaneously, each taking one of Harry's arms. He didn't resist physically, but he continued shouting as they began escorting him toward the stage exit. You're all going to pay for this, Harry yelled as he was led away. This is exactly what happened to my mother. You push and push until someone breaks, and then you act like victims. Your mother never threw anything at a talk show host, Colbert called after him, his anger finally boiling over. She had class and dignity, even under pressure. You should try learning from her example instead of using her memory as an excuse for your behavior. The words stopped Harry in his tracks. He turned around, his face a mask of pure hatred, and for a moment it looked like he might break free from the security guards and charge at Colbert. "How dare you bring up my mother?" he screamed, struggling against the guard's grip. "You have no right to speak her name." "You brought her up first," Colbert shot back. "You've been using her death as justification for your tantrum this entire time. Well, guess what? Your mother faced real adversity with grace and dignity. This behavior dishonors her memory." The observation was devastating in its accuracy. Harry's face crumpled as the words sank in, and for a brief moment he looked less like a raging prince and more like a broken man who had just realized the depths of his own hypocrisy. But the moment of clarity was brief. His expression hardened, again as the security guards began pulling him toward the exit. "This isn't over," Harry called out as he was dragged away. "The whole world is going to know what kind of person you really are, Stephen Colbert. They're going to see how you ambushed me, how you deliberately triggered my trauma for entertainment. The whole world just watched you throw a glass at me because I asked you about your mental health project," Colbert replied, straightening his tie and trying to regain his composure. "I don't think I need to worry about my reputation here." As Harry disappeared behind the curtain, still shouting threats and accusations, the studio fell into an eerie silence. The audience sat in stunned disbelief, unsure whether to applaud, boo, or simply sit in shocked silence. Colbert walked back to his desk, stepping carefully around the broken glass, and looked directly into the camera. His face was pale, his hands were shaking slightly, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled from when he had ducked to avoid the flying glass. "Well, folks," he said, his voice still trembling with adrenaline, "that's not exactly how I plan to spend my evening. When someone comes on your show to talk about mental health awareness and then has a complete breakdown, it's both ironic and deeply sad." He paused, running a hand through his hair as he tried to process what had just happened. "I want to be clear about something. Mental health struggles are real, and they deserve compassion and understanding. But using your pain as an excuse to attack others, to throw things, to blame everyone except yourself for your behavior, that's not mental health advocacy. That's just a tantrum with a fancy justification." The audience remained silent, still, processing the unprecedented scene they had just witnessed. Colbert looked around at the broken glass, the water stains on his backdrop, and the empty guest chair where Harry had been sitting just minutes before. "I genuinely hope Prince Harry gets the help he clearly needs," Colbert continued, his voice softening slightly. "But if you're going to advocate for mental health awareness, you need to demonstrate healthy ways of handling emotional distress. What you just saw was the exact opposite of that." He looked directly into the camera one final time. "We're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll try to end this show on a more positive note. Because frankly, after what we just witnessed, we could all use a little positivity right now." As the cameras cut to commercial, Colbert slumped back in his chair, the full weight of what had just happened settling over him. In all his years of hosting late-night television, he had never experienced anything quite like the complete meltdown he had just witnessed. The man who had come to advocate for mental health awareness had instead provided one of the most disturbing examples of emotional instability ever caught on live television. That's the story of how a prince lost his mind on national television. And trust me, this is one interview that Stephen Colbert will never forget. What do you think drove Harry to such an extreme breakdown? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible celebrity stories that you won't believe actually happened.